G'day new starters. Well, last week I had the wonderful privilege of going away for a week with Rob Fringer. We went into the city area of Brisbane. We got an apartment for a week where we spent myself primarily researching, Rob primarily beginning the finishing touches to his PhD thesis. And so we had a great week together, but as a result I didn't record anything last week, and then this week has kind of gotten away from me. But I was thinking about this video today, and for the last couple of weeks I have been working on something that's not incredibly fascinating in terms of this process. I've been dealing with the methodology that I will use in my thesis, and I'm hoping that by the time I get to the end of an understanding of how to effectively present that, that I might be able to say something about that in terms of my videos. I think there's an angle, but normally the methodology you use is the least exciting part of a thesis. But as I've been doing that, I've also had this ongoing consideration about the background to my thesis. Now, some of the stuff I want to share with you today I've kind of shared before in the development part of this series, and some I've obviously shared in times gone by, but it does kind of help me to reflect on what's the key issues that I'm trying to get at. When I was young, growing up, particularly teenager, mid-teenager, I was very, very aware of my own sense of inadequacy. I felt not good enough at pretty much every point in my life. While studies weren't particularly difficult for me, I never did very, very well in anything, and probably I was a little bit lazy, and never got the feedback from my studies that I'm a great student. I still feel that way, actually. I wasn't particularly good at sport. I liked playing sport and played cricket in the backyard and did things at school, but I was never very good at any of that. I didn't have a lot of friends, never more than one or two friends at any particular time. I didn't have any hobbies. If there had been computers around when I was a young person, I'm pretty confident I would have been a computer geek, but we didn't have those, so I'm not sure what kind of geek I was, but probably a television geek to tell you the truth. But there wasn't a lot in my life that caused me to feel like, I'm doing something that's significant. I did always have this sense that one day my life would unfold in a way that would reflect the worth of my existence. But for most of the time, I was pretty well confronted with my inadequacy. There came a time later in my teen life when I felt more and more like if the ground swallowed me up, nobody would particularly miss me. And in that whole process, I very much remember different times in my life. It wasn't an always existence. There were lots of times I was quite happy. There were lots of times that things felt good, but persistently all through that period was this self-doubt, sense of worthlessness, sense of inadequacy, and that sense that maybe one day people are going to find out who I really am, and they'll discover that I really don't have any reason to live. The interesting thing is that as I got older and I started to talk to other people about their lives, whether it just be a casual conversation that led down this road, or whether it be something that was built on a longer relational process, it became invariably true that there was a commonality in those experiences. A commonality not necessarily in the way that it was sensed or in the ideas that were sensed, but certainly a commonality in that sense of not being good enough, of a sense of worthlessness in whatever shape it might take. I discovered many years later that sense is called shame, and there are many people who offer that everybody experiences shame. It's very interesting to me when I looked at those things, I was able to step back and have a think about it, how consistently true it was that the ideas of shame were in relationship to other people and their expectations or understandings of who I am. So I might look at myself in cricket and playing a game of cricket and not do very well and feel shame because I didn't do well enough. But it wasn't cricket in isolation. It was the people I was playing with. It was coaches. It was people that might be watching from the side. In fact, many of the times that I experience shame, I'm experiencing shame in relationship to an imagined person. You ever felt that? Driving along the road or walking down the street and you make some silly faux pas. And you look around to see if somebody has noticed you and you're just sure that somebody who you can't quite tell saw you and they're walking away laughing at you. So there is very real this sense that shame is related to other people, and not so much even other people, but our understanding of the way other people are viewing us. And it's in that place that we feel worthless. Well, as I looked at it, as I've looked at it across the years, I have discovered that for the majority of people learn how to cope with that through the life. So you start talking about shame and people say, oh yeah, I remember that, or I don't really struggle with that, or whatever. But given the right set of circumstances, most people will find themselves struggling with shame. But for the most part, people are able to say, I don't really deal with that. But when you look at it, there have been things that have happened in their life. Their relationships, successes, accomplishments, careers, education, from which there's drawn a sense of worth. And that sense of worth coming from those places overrides that sense of worthlessness, and we get engaged in some mental activity and we're able to tell ourselves, I am valuable, here's all the reasons why. But it's true that you take those things away and a person returns to the state of worthlessness. And so you'll see many, or often hear at least, of very successful people that seem to have everything together committing suicide. And clearly those things are related to mental disorders, but at the core of it is this sense of worthlessness, this pervasive shame. And so I began to think about that in terms of worth and in terms of this relational component. And as my faith began to grow, I recognized that love, which is the core of faith, actually is also the activity involved in worth. So I feel valuable when I'm with other people when they love me. And I don't feel valuable at all when I feel rejected, disconnected or despised. And so that sense of worthlessness comes in again. And then, of course, you make the logical conclusion, you make the logical walk down the road to the beginning of human understanding, the experience described in the garden and that of the fall. And you recognize that it is true that when sin entered the world, the relationship of sustaining love with the Father was cut off, and what happened in response was shame. And so you can see that very, very clearly outlaid in the story in the garden. And so it becomes a significant part of what I'm trying to achieve here, is to understand our relationship with God in terms of love, His reaching to us in terms of love, but where it becomes impacting in our lives is actually at the point where we allow Him to shape our sense of identity. So as long as faith is an add-on mental construct that helps me make sense of the world, it will have less of an impact on our lives. But the moment I begin to lose my identity, myself, in my relationship with God, as long as I let go of all of the other things from which I gain identity, and allow His love to become the source of identity, shame actually begins to be dealt with from the inside out. And these constructs begin to make sense of the idea of being filled with love, the idea of walking with God, of finding myself in Christ, of living out love. I'm only adequately able to love as if I've experienced love transformationally in my life. And so I'm able to love a little because love is always present in all of our lives, but I am able to love truly greatly when I have been transformed truly greatly. And this is a theme that keeps coming up in my conversations with people as I'm talking about the foundation of my thesis. So I thought I'd share that with you while I'm working through the more dull portion of my methodology. So thanks for listening today. Have a think about how that works in your life, and if you like, you can even let me know your thoughts on those issues. So have a great week, and we'll talk again next week. Thanks.